If your feed looks anything like mine and it is reel after reel of beautiful Japan, countryside, nature, places to visit, things to do, and brimming with tips about what to expect in Japan, then you're going to want to listen to this video. It's not all as it seems. Hello, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jazz and today we're talking about Japan. It's been almost 4 months since my trip to Japan and I thought it was time to do a sit down video. We were in Japan for around 3 weeks and we visited Tokyo, Osaka and Kyoto, plus some little side towns and day trips. And this video is going to be based off of the experiences that we had personally while we were there, and while they may differ to other people, I still wanted to share these anyways in hopes that you in planning your trip to Japan as well. Social media is literally abuzz with Japan content at the moment. It is like the hotspot. Everyone and their sister and grandpa and cousin is off to Japan, right? It is literally the place to be and it is beautiful in every way. But as seems to be a common theme with social media, not everything is as it seems. So we're going to break down some of the most common information that was filtered through to me through social media and how much of it was helpful and not helpful, and some things that are just not the case at all. So starting off with bins. Bins was a super common thing that I was seeing getting sort of preached over and over again, that there's no bins anywhere in Japan, and you would need to take a rubbish bag around with you and carry it all day. This couldn't be further from the truth. So while I live in Australia and we do have a lot more bins than Japan does, 100% out in public, there are definitely bins in Japan and they are not that hard to find. If you're not using a reusable water bottle, you'll probably be spending a lot of time at the vending machines that are basically on every street corner, right? Next to majority of these vending machines, you will find a recyclable bin where you can dump your old water bottles and go on your merry way. The other places you'll find bins is shopping centres, parks, and a lot of convenies. A lot of the convenies will also have sitting areas where you can sit and eat your food, and then obviously there is going to be rubbish bins there because it's a very, very tidy place. There's not a lot of people walking around eating food like on the streets. It's not super common. So it's usually more so you'll go somewhere, buy some food, eat some food, and then go. So you're not really going to have a problem with rubbish and having to carry around a plastic bag. I think that was very over-exaggerated, to be fair. The reality though is that Japan is a very clean place. There's not rubbish on the ground. There's no smoking in most of the big cities now as well, and you're not going to find rubbish. There's always someone cleaning. The streets are always spotless. It is a beautiful, pristine place to be, and that is such a nice change up from here. The train system. I couldn't find a lot of information about the train system, and that's something that I wish there was more information about on social media that was sort of popping around on the internet. There's a little bit of information around the cards and like the Seeker cards and the JR passes and things like that. It is definitely worth doing your research and knowing with your trip how you're planning it on whether it is worth your while getting a JR pass, because they have gone up in pricing. But it is a very valuable thing to have, and we will be using it on our next trip, 100%. This trip though, we use the Welcome Seeker cards and have a little Google on those, and you'll find a lot of information already on the internet, but they are a great starting point if you're not going to be doing a lot of bullet trains or a lot of trips across country and stuff like that. The train system itself, however, is so simple and so easy to grasp. It blew my mind. I don't understand the train systems and public transport systems here in Queensland, yet I was confident after the first day of being in Japan. Everything is color-coded, the system makes sense. There's a lot of information inside the trains and they show you which stations you're stopping at consistently so that you're never stressing about where you are or what's happening. It is honestly just such an efficient system, and it makes getting around Japan so much easier. Okay, let's talk about polite culture. Okay, polite culture. It is a very real thing. Everyone is extremely courteous of each other and polite. Everything flows with this immaculate level of efficiency. No matter where you are, peak times, it doesn't matter. There's just this literal level of efficiency that I've never experienced before, and it's just amazing, honestly. They really are just so nice to you, even when there's a huge language barrier as well. It's very refreshing. And while we're on this subject, I wanted to touch on the gaijin seat thing that was going around as well. So while I'm not denying this is undoubtedly a thing that people have experienced, it's something that we never did though. In our 3 weeks in Tokyo, Osaka and Kyoto, we never had this situation ever, but I can definitely see how it could be a thing, and not to say it's anything bad about the people that are experiencing this, and it could be different areas as well. It's just something that never happened for us. Let's touch on their modesty culture around fashion though. I saw very little information about this, and the ones I did see didn't seem super adamant that this was like a huge thing, or you know, that you would need to dress a certain way or do certain things. But because of how little it was on social media, I really didn't expect it to be as prominent as it was. Pretty much everyone dresses extremely modestly, covering up most of their skin, particularly shoulders and cleavage area and things like that. And while I know they don't have a problem with tourists dressing however they want, it is also like super obvious though. So the first day that we went out shopping, I was wearing like a little crop top that kind of was similar to this, but like just little straps and like quite short as well. And mostly the seniors, granted, it's mostly the seniors, I got a lot of stares. Like they were making it obvious that it was like, whoa, you know? And that really took me by surprise because I wasn't expecting that at all. And I only say that because I did notice it, and then as soon as I bought more fashion from Japan, as I intended to, I didn't come with much in my suitcase. As soon as I was dressing in their fashion, I did not notice anyone watching me at all, anyone looking, nothing. You just blend in so much better and no one even notices you. And you do actually notice tourists out of everyone though, because of how differently they're dressed, and it's kind of just like catches your attention more than anything. And considering I went there and wanted to blend into their like society as much as possible, it was kind of a shock to me. And while I don't hate on tourists for dressing how they want to, you definitely do stand out like a sore thumb. Now before we get to my final 3 points, I just wanted to touch on the language barrier situation as well. There's a lot of differing opinions online on whether you need to learn anything, whether you should learn some of the language before you go there, and I just wanted to share my experience with this as well. I had very minimal knowledge of the Japanese language before going to Japan. I wanted to start learning and had started to, but I was learning things that weren't actually helpful in communicating with anyone. And while I do agree that you don't need to know the language to visit there, especially if you know English, then I think it will definitely elevate your experience if you do know at least a little bit of the language. It can get very overwhelming when you don't speak or understand what's going on in situations and things, and while there is translation apps, they only get you so far. A lot of the big tourist-based cities have a lot of English signs around, a lot of English information underneath the Japanese information, so that is super helpful and can definitely get you to a lot of places effortlessly. And you can pick up very quickly what cashiers and that are asking of you after you've been to a few different stores. But I would highly, highly recommend learning some Japanese, greetings and basic directional information. It will just help exponentially in your experience in Japan if you can speak a little bit of their language. So while you absolutely can get away with not knowing the language properly and use a translation app like Papago or Google Translate, I would definitely recommend learning some basics. Here are the other places where social media wasn't as accurate as I hoped it would be. Japan being anime pop culture central, they cycle through a lot of pop-ups and events and things like that. And there's a lot of people like posting some of those current pop-ups or past pop-ups, where to find them, and for the most part, those pop-ups are usually expired or gone or rotated through. But most social media creators have not expressed this information or shared this, especially when their video from a year or two ago is popping off now, and that that display has not been around for a few months. The unfortunate thing too is this is not always an easy thing to just Google search up either. Not a lot of stuff gets updated on like Google Maps and things like that for Japan, like pop-ups, displays, stores, even those sort of things. Not everything's always up to date, and so a lot of these pop-ups are inside like a specific shop or a center or a mall or places like this where it's not easy access to find out if these things are still going. But a little bit of, so I would definitely err on the side of caution if you are finding things on social media that are not like an established business like Sanrio Land or Ghibli Park, places like these that you know are like an established place of business that is going to be, that you know it's not going anywhere. At least I hope not. So when it comes to anime displays and pop-ups, definitely try and suss out on the internet, check the dates of these videos, check the comments if other people are asking about these questions as well, and be aware that it may not be there when you arrive. Japan travel hacks. Unfortunately, when a travel hack goes viral on the internet, it kind of loses its validity and value. For instance, when creators are telling you that you can visit this place because it's secluded and not a popular destination, so there's not going to be the crowds, or visit this location early hours of the morning to avoid crowds and these sort of things. When those videos go viral, and Japan being a very, very, very popular travel destination at the moment, they don't hold ground anymore because everyone is going to those locations in hopes of avoiding crowds or visiting earlier in the morning to avoid crowds. And when everyone's doing this, there's crowds. So it is an unfortunate reality of visiting places and seeing really helpful hacks and useful tips on the internet that everyone else is also looking at and hoping to be able to take advantage of. Unfortunately, you go to the bamboo forest at 7 AM and it's packed. You go to the torii gates early in the morning and it's packed. I don't know why, but it was a consistent thing that I kept getting pushed to me on socials that toilets are hard to find in Japan. I don't know where this information comes from and why these people were struggling to find toilets, but there are toilets everywhere in Japan. It's crazy. Every train station has toilets, and there are train stations everywhere. Everywhere. Train stations have toilets, shopping centers have toilets, most restaurants like cafes, places have toilets. Anywhere that you're going to a place is going to have bathrooms there. Any destination that you're looking to go to is going to have bathrooms, and they are going to be immaculate. Every bathroom is usually got a bidet toilet, sensor buttons so that you can flush without touching anything. They've got hygiene dispensers for like wiping down, like disinfectant to wipe down the toilet seats. They've got privacy music that you can play, heated seats. They're always clean. It's just so good. They're so beautiful, and I was devastated to have to come back to Australian bathrooms. The only toilets and bathrooms that aren't like this are the ones that you'll find in the sort of parks and places like that, where they're very, very minimal. And they will have like a seated toilet and a squat toilet. Here he is. Hello. Come to say hi. And also the need to have one of those little hand cloths and your own soap. That I also was confused by as well, because majority of the toilets, especially ones in like train stations and shopping centers and everything, they all had soap, and for the most part they all had either air dryers or paper towel. If you've got a little bottle of hand sanitizer with you, then you shouldn't have any problems if the odd toilet, say out of the main kind of cities and that, doesn't have a soap dispenser or something like that. And not to say you don't need or you shouldn't have one of those little hand cloths, because they could be helpful if you need that or you want that, but it just wasn't a necessity for us, and I had very few experiences where I needed to air dry my hands, so I just think it wasn't as important as it kind of is expressed online. Tourism rates. There are so many tourist traps and the prices of things are not as you'd expect now. Not to say it wasn't cheaper in the last like 2 years, but when we went in October, I was shocked because I had seen so many videos online showing how like cheap everything is comparatively and stuff. And while that's not a complete lie by any means, because there is a lot of things that are cheaper, your general like supermarket foods, a lot of restaurants, things like that, even a lot of clothes places, like it is cheaper for sure than Australia, absolutely, but a lot of the things that I was going there for, like nerdy pop culture anime things, no. Yeah, there's your few stores like the Animate and like reseller anime stores, I guess they're called. I don't really know what they're called, but like they sell used or pre-owned. Some of them are still like perfectly packaged boxes of figurines that people are just like reselling, I guess. But those places tend to have the cheaper pricing. Most other things though did not match up to like what people were saying online, which really took me by surprise. And when we went, 700 yen was the equivalent of like $7 Australian about. So yeah, when I would find things and I'd be like, oh my god, that's not at all. The other thing to note too is if you have any dietary requirements with food, you are going to be paying similar, not as high, but similar prices to back home here. Restaurant meals were a little bit more than we sort of expected, but definitely still cheaper than Australian restaurants. But yeah, the minute you add dietary requirements, it does tend to jack up the pricing a little bit. So that's just something worth noting. When it comes to your budget for shopping, I would definitely save on the higher side than the lower and expect things to be a little bit pricier than you probably thought they were going to be, just to err on the safe side. And finally, the last point of this video is hands down the worst part of our experience while we were in Japan, and that was tourists, which is a really disappointing and saddening thing to have to say, but Japan is a beautiful place and everyone is so kind, everything runs so efficiently, everyone is so respectful of each other, except for the tourists. And that was the worst part by far of our 3 weeks in Japan. It was consistently tourists from all over the world. It was not specific. The trains are meant to be quiet and you're not even allowed to take phone calls on the trains. Everyone is quiet. And it's a really nice, peaceful experience, especially on a train. Repeatedly, without a doubt, anytime there were tourists on the trains, they were loud and obnoxious and not getting up for seniors or offering their seats to people that needed them, especially when they were in the priority seating, and just yeah, being a nuisance to society essentially on the trains and in public. Even in public, everyone is really quiet in Japan. Like there's just not a lot of like loud chatter and noise and things like that. It's mostly just traffic noises and like the bustling of a society, right? But holy, tourists were just obnoxiously loud the whole time. And the amount of signs written only in English to say where not to sit, where not to stand, where not to eat, literally just intended for tourists because they kept breaking the rules and the flow of society, essentially, is just really disappointing again. You would think logically that if you're going to another country to experience that culture and that world, that you would want to respect that. And it is really sad to know that so many don't. And I'm just hoping it doesn't ruin that experience for others and also for the people that live in that country. I also saw so many things on social media of like in the cherry blossom seasons, tourists ruining that as well, and like places where they've had to put big fences up to block views and things, and I can definitely understand why that was the case. There were so many signs everywhere on where you could and couldn't take photos and videos, and that's just really sad because you know why that's had to happen in the first place. It really isn't hard to follow what everybody else is doing, to walk on the same sides of the road, to read the signs on the ground that tell you where you should be walking and where you shouldn't be walking, and reading signs to know where not to take photos, where not to eat, where not to sit, and when there's signs saying to be quiet, and just to respect other people's lives. It's definitely not hard, and again, it is so disappointing to know that like there was just so many people visiting as tourists that were just, one, ruining it for other people, and also not respecting the people that already live there. And while it's really sad that like that's the worst part of the trip, it's also nice because it was nothing to do with Japan and everything to do with the rest of the world. And that sums up some of the experiences that we had while we were in Japan and how that differed or was helped or hindered by social media. If you had similar or different experiences, please put them down in the comments so that we can all see them and learn from your experiences as well. And if you enjoyed this video, I would love you to subscribe and catch you in the next one. Alright, bye!